So I'd like to go on about what is it in the brain that actually um, causes panic disorder to happen on such a chronic basis for those people who experience panic attacks fairly often compared to people who don't. Well, we essentially merely have an overactive amygdala, and the amygdala stores emotional memories, okay? And the more traumatic experiences we've been through in childhood, or so it could be nature versus nurture, right? It could be like you're born with, just naturally born with an overactive amygdala, even though you've had a perfect upbringing, your childhood has been great, you were well looked after. You might have just been born just genetically with a predisposition to anxiety and panic attacks. There is also the concept of nurture as well, okay? And I really want you to consider these two things. It's really, really, really important for you to consider these two things. If it's nurture, okay, essentially may have gone through repeated traumatic experiences through childhood. Okay, I really want you to think about this one, because our brains tend to kind of block this out. Like on the level of the neocortex, the thinking, rational part of the brain that's full of awareness doesn't understand the memories that are contained in the amygdala and the hippocampus. Okay, the neocortex doesn't understand the memories that are contained in the amygdala and hippocampus, and it's important to use the power of the neocortex in order to rediscover these memories and write them down and actually judge on and make some judgments about them, try to find out exactly what were some big parts of your life. And once you use the power of your neocortex, the conscious, rational part of your brain, to rediscover these memories, you can then begin to understand them, okay? Because neocortex is all involved in understanding and logic. And once you can logically understand what has caused, what traumatic events it was in the past that caused you so much chronic anxiety or panic attacks, then you at least have that answer for yourself, and you can and you can now start working on the self-awareness and becoming aware of each situation that's causing any physical symptom inside your body, okay? And so here's the thing, is that if it was nurture, okay, you would have been brought up with going through either, like emotional abuse, like neglect, or you would have seen physical violence or sexual violence, or you've been involved in some form of repeated assaults. It could even be one event which caused post-traumatic stress for you, or you could have been part of a multitude of events that cause complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And complex post-traumatic stress disorder is where you go through chronic trauma on an ongoing basis where you cannot escape. That's complex PTSD. And PTSD is just where you have one event that traumatized you significantly, and the emotional memory was stored in the amygdala. And this brings me to why the amygdala is so overactive. And the reason why the amygdala is so overactive is because with each traumatic experience we go through, depending on how significant that experience was, depends on how long that memory will be retained in the amygdala. And the more that memory is retained in the amygdala, the amygdala remembers how you physically responded to that stressor or that situation. And it's basically trained the amygdala and caused deep emotional memories in the amygdala. And so the relationship between the amygdala and the hippocampus is that the amygdala stores the memory of the emotion that was felt in the moment. Okay, that's a big one. The amygdala, let me say that again. The amygdala stores the memory of the emotion you felt in that particular experience. And the hippocampus, on the other side of that, actually stores the dry facts of the experiences. So, meaning the hippocampus actually looks at the context of all the situations, not the emotion that was experienced in the situation, but the context. Where were you? Who was it? How did you feel? It's all stored in those memories. Okay, so the amygdala and the hippocampus work together to form so that whatever experiences you've gone through in the past will actually, since the hippocampus remembers the context of the stresses or the situation, the amygdala and the hippocampus put the two and two together and conditions your brain to actually respond in fear to those situations. Okay, and this brings me around to my last point: is like, what can we do about this? How can we actually overcome the response by the amygdala, the instant response through this back alley of nerves to the thalamus? How can we actually respond to something that already causes a fear response in us instantaneously? The thing is that, to be honest, you do have to actually be above your mind. You have to be above your mind. And essentially the way you can do that is actually by becoming self-aware, okay? And there is actually an intelligence inside yourself, and it's not actually a logical intelligence that so much as what we see with IQ, but more so it's actually an emotional intelligence. And if you read the book Emotional Intelligence by I forgot his name, his surname is actually Goleman, but essentially what the case is here is that those who are actually aware of their own emotions or intelligent with their emotions are those people who are aware of how they're responding to a situation in any given moment. You have to actually observe. Okay, you have to go into a state of observation and actually observe what's happening inside your body as soon as the feelings of anxiety begin, on the onset of the anxiety, on the onset of the panic or what have you. So that's just really important, is that, and the way we can actually really overcome these feelings of panic and fear is that we have to meditate. And if we, and I know that meditation sounds quite woo-woo and hoo-ha, but it is actually also something that has been found out to be very beneficial by scientists as well. There are certain areas of the brain that light up on MRI scanning that actually show that there are things going on inside the brain when you meditate. And when you meditate, what happens is that you're actually becoming aware of the thoughts, okay? It's not about resisting the thought or trying not to think about anything. It's about actually being in a state of observation, aka awareness, and seeing the thoughts actually float past, actually float by in your mind. And the more you do this, the more you're actually training your brain to actually respond appropriately to situations that would normally elicit a fear response. Now, a lot of you out there will say that, hang on, I don't really know what causes a fear response for me. I just feel it out of nowhere. It just happens for no reason. Let's be honest, it does actually, there is actually a reason to it. You're just not aware of the reason, okay? And that's why I'm telling you, you have to consider nature versus nurture, okay? And if it is part of your nature to actually respond in fear in any given situation, then then you need to still use self-awareness to actually go into a state of observation every single time there's the onset of panic and fear. The other side of that is nurture, and you need to really consider that too. Did you go through emotionally tough times in your childhood? Did you go through trauma? Did anything affect you deeply that you're not aware of just yet? And we forget about these things on the level of our neocortex, but the emotional memories stay with us forever, which we don't have awareness of. The limbic system of the brain, actually, we don't have awareness of. It's something that is very primitive, something that was once useful back in times of the caveman, but not anymore. Well, no, it still is, let's be honest, but very rarely or occasionally you might get into strife, or if you're getting attacked by someone with a knife in the street, then yeah, the limbic system is helpful because it means it shuts off that thinking part of yourself and you run away. But always be in a state of focus, always be in a state of awareness, and always meditate. Every time you meditate, you're strengthening those areas of the brain that observe thought. And the more you observe thought, the more disconnected from the experience we are, and we don't take the experience seriously. And people who are emotionally intelligent are actually very aware of their emotions, are very empathetic people as well, and they have great interpersonal skills as well, and that's the bonus for people who are emotionally intelligent as well. So I would say just keep at it, just keep being on a level above your mind. Be above your mind and actually once you're above your mind, and being above your mind is what I mean by being aware and being focused, then things are going to get a lot easier. And do not slack off, because if you slack off, it's going to be more and more difficult to kind of figure out or to try to train yourself to respond more appropriately to a situation, okay? So at the end of the day, let me summarize all these points. The problem here is that the neocortex takes double the amount of time to process what is going on that is happening to you. It's that the neocortex is taking double the time than the amygdala. And when the amygdala responds first, you're already going through the fear response straight away, and without your awareness. But if you still stay aware, you can train yourself to get out of this, I guess, kind of issue, I guess. So hope that helped. If you want any further information, I'm still answering questions on my blog, anxietystation.tumblr.com, and I'll have some more videos out to come. Catch you around, guys. See ya.